Hi everyone, this is our zoology lecture class, and we're going to talk about evolution and gene frequencies. Previously, we had the evolution, the history of evolution, and what are the evidences of evolution. Right now, we're going to combine the Darwinian thought on evolution and all about population genetics, and we're going to link the two so that we can have a more understanding of what gene frequencies will contribute to the descendant modifications as described by Charles Darwin. So for the introduction, it was being said by Darwin that natural selection can be envisioned as operating in two ways. Both are important perspectives in evolution, and in one way, we will be looking at the characteristics of individual animals. So you can see it here on the right corner of this slide, a beautiful butterfly. Okay, so it has two pairs of wings, and it has a vibrant colors that is really attractive, not just for our consumption, but for the predators as well. So these butterflies are gathering nectars and participating in the pollination process for plants. Okay? So when a population of birds acquires an adaptation through natural selection, that permits its members to feed more efficiently on butterflies. So one of the predators of butterflies are birds. Okay? And the trait is described in terms of the physical characteristics, like the bill shape, as it was described by adaptive regulation from the previous presentation. It really has an effect on their diet. Okay, when it comes to the big size of an animal or a bird, they have to acquire this inherited behavior. And the description of natural selection requires that natural selection must act in the context of living organisms. They must act upon the conditions that are needed with this example. So the organism, however, must be viewed as a vehicle that permits the phenotypic expression of genes. Just like a butterfly or any animal, they carry down the important traits, like physical traits, survival traits. These traits are being transferred from a different set to the other set, or generations to different generations. This time, this chapter or this lesson will talk about how genes, okay, are being acted by natural selection. From the previous presentation, we talked about the occurrence of evolution based on the existing theories by Malthus, by Wallace, by Darwin, by Lamarck, and the previous pre-Darwinian contributors of the theory of evolution. But right now, we're talking about genes. Okay, the genes are important. They are located within your cell, the chromosomes in particular, and they are the supercoiled double helical structures, blueprints of life, which we call as the DNA. Okay, and natural selection operates on this one. Birds and butterflies are not permanent; they die. So these animals, just like humans, any other animals, living organisms on Earth, are not immortal. Okay, so but the genes they carry on, or the traits that they carry, are immortal. The result of natural selection and evolution in general is reflected in how common, how rare, specific alleles are in a group of animals that are interbreeding and therefore sharing genes. So an example of this photo is inherited variations of this bird. Okay, this African white-fronted bee-eater, okay, it ate the butterfly. The name of the bird is Merops bullocidus. It can catch enough food to enable it to reproduce. The evolution of this species will be reflected in how common, how rare, how specific the genes it carries. Okay, so we'll talk about populations and gene pools. What are populations and gene pools? When we say population, these are groups of species that are interacting with each other. Okay, gene pools are reservoir of your traits, allele that are present in the population. So what are the learning objectives? We relate the concept of a gene pool to a population of animals and explain why different individuals within a population are genetically different from each other. So what are populations? Individuals not evolve. Okay, evolution is requiring that genetic changes are passed on from one generation to the next within the larger groups. Okay, it is not the evolution does not happen between species, okay, or between individuals. It must have moving or occurring in a different larger sense. Okay, populations are, as I said, groups of individuals of the same species that occupy a given area at the same time and share a common set of genes. So, say a population of cockatoo, a population of Philippine wild pig, etc. Gene pool at the same time is the sum of all the alleles for all traits in a sexually reproducing population. Is a pool of hereditary resources for the entire population, and it's called a gene pool. So this is like a pool. Well, a pool has a large size, a large volume. It holds huge volume of water or for a swimming pool. But this gene pool is also the same thing with swimming pool. It's an enormous amount of genes that are being shared or being acquired by a certain population. They are reproducing populations. Okay, so these populations are practicing sexual reproduction, which involves the union of gametes of the sperm and the egg. So how variety is that? How varied or what is the variety of that gene pool, which is basically given that there are sources of variation. So we have variety within individuals. A population results from having various combinations of alleles at each locus. So alleles, okay, which are found in a certain loci or locus of your chromosomes, are varied. Okay, it's varied from different individuals, and these sources of variation will include, you have 5 sources. The first is the independent assortment of chromosomes that results in the random distribution of chromosomes into gametes. So that's independent assortment. It's happening during the cell division. Okay, there is a random chances that the genes that are being carried by each offspring is different from one another. So we call that the independent assortment of chromosomes. Okay, it happens in meiosis 1 and 2. And number 2, the crossing over that results in shuffling of alleles between homologous chromosomes. It happens also in meiosis. Okay, the crossing over that crosses 2 arms of your chromosomes are forming a synapse. Okay, synapse, which is also called as a crossing over. So that's the paternal and paternal side are sharing both traits. And the third is the chance fertilization of an egg by a sperm cell. So, chance, okay? We have a lot of sperm cell being ejaculated by the male, and there's only one sperm that could reach to penetrate the layers, different layers of your egg cell. And lastly, we have variations also arise from rearrangements in the number and structure of chromosomes and mutations of existing alleles. These variations are coming from chromosomes. Okay, since animals, okay, they say humans we are diploid organisms. So some of the animals are haploid. We have also called multiple ploidy or polyploids in the animal kingdom. So this is also a good source of variation. Evolution occurs again within populations, and the sum of all alleles in the population is called the gene pool and represents the set of genetic resources available for the population. So the variety of individuals of a population results from cell processes occurring in meiotic cell division, random fertilization, and also meiosis. So must evolution happen? That's a question. It's a big, big question. Why does it happen, and why Charles Darwin is insisting that it happened with natural selection? So we have to justify the statement most populations are evolving. Since evolution is central to biology, but is evolution always occurring in a particular population? You always think that in the population of tertiary, is it really there will becoming a kind of the eye size of these maternal primates are reducing in size, or it will be continue to enlarge, or sometimes it's modification of its body, etc. So we don't know. Sometimes the rate of evolution is slow, it's sometimes rapid. But are there times when evolution doesn't occur at all? We don't know. We really don't know. That's why we're studying this. And the answer to this question lies in the theories of popgen, or population genetics, in the study of genetic events in gene pools, how they are being shared, how they are being acquired by each of the member of the population. So we have this Hardy-Weinberg theorem, which was being devised by English mathematician Godfrey Hardy and German physician Wilhelm Weinberg, independently to derive a mathematical model describing what happens to the relative frequency of alleles in a sexually reproducing population over time. So these mathematical models are explaining, the relative frequency of alleles. It means to say how many or how frequent is this allele. Let's say, for example, eye size, or large eye size. How is it being shared? How much does a certain individuals or species will acquire that specific trait or allele? Okay, so we call this Hardy-Weinberg theorem. And what are the assumptions of this theorem? We have number one, the population size must be large. Okay, large size ensures that gene frequency will not change by chance alone. So there must be a participation of not just a few but a lot of organisms or species for the variation to happen. Okay. Next, individuals could not migrate into or out of the population. So we could not really give the individuals a chance to migrate into or out, because it will somehow remove the chances of variation. Okay, because they flew away, or these are immigrants coming in from the different place. So of course they carry different set of alleles, they carry different set of phenotypes to a population that is introduced, and we could not really assume that the Hardy-Weinberg theorem is possible. Migration is also a good is an indicator where an introduction of a new genes alleles to a new pool may add or delete copies of the existing alleles. So we must be cautious, aware that introduced species are detrimental, even though they are animals or plants, etc. But again, since they are not a part of the contributors of gene pools, we cannot really help them to participate the process. Third, mutations must not occur. Mutations, if they do, mutation equilibrium must exist. So it exists when a mutation from the wild type allele, severe, it's the present allele in the area for a longest period of time. Okay, I mean the default allele to a mutant form is balanced by mutation from the mutant form back to the wild type. So wild type becoming a mutant, and mutant becoming a wild type. So no new genes are introduced into the population from the source. So that's okay if mutational equilibrium will exist, but we will remove that idea for us to assume the Hardy-Weinberg theorem. And lastly, we have sexual reproduction within the population must be random. Okay, every individual has an equal chance of mating with any other individual in the population. If the condition is not fulfilled, then some individuals are more likely to reproduce than others, and natural selection will occur. Random, I mean to say, there is no loyalty in animals. Okay, so a male animal might choose one, or two, or five, or many different partners or mates, and females is doing the same thing too. Even their offsprings are also a part of their are also participating in sexual reproduction. So that's random. Okay, so natural selection also acts on that. If they are able to if they are able to get some of the alleles in the population, it's been on, there are some individuals that are reproducing more, but there are some that does not reproduce, and those that don't reproduce will soon be out. I mean, they soon get out of resources and die. So what are these evolutionary mechanisms? Evolutionary mechanisms that are acting. So here, evolution is described as neither a creative force working for progress nor a dark force sacrificing individuals for the sake of the group. It is neither a moral nor immoral. It's neither a goal nor a mind to conceive a goal. Such goal-oriented thinking is said to be teleological. Evolution is simply a result of some individuals in the population surviving and being more effective at reproducing than others. And this is this definition of a species, okay, a biological concept of species. If the species are able to mate and reproduce, transfer its alleles, genes, traits to other generation, then they could be a part of evolution. Okay? So this evolution is simply a result of some individuals in a group surviving and being more effective in hunting and gathering and avoiding the predators and keeping the eye on the prey, etc. Okay, so if this happens, okay, it will lead to changes in relative allelic frequencies. It means the allelic frequencies will vary. Okay. This next section will examine the situations when the Hardy-Weinberg assumptions are not met, situations in which gene frequencies change from one generation to the next and evolution will occur. And we call that one genetic drift, okay? Which is just like when you have tossing of coin, it's always a 50-50 chance, with 50% head, 50% tail. And chance plays an important role in the perpetuation of genes in the populations. Okay? The smaller the population, the more significant the chance may be, because we have fewer individuals participating. For vicious circumstances, such as the chance encounter between reproductive individuals, it may promote reproduction. Okay? It may promote reproduction while some traits of a population survive not because they convey increased fitness, but because they happen to be in gametes involved in fertilization. So this importance of the gametes in fertilization will help the traits to survive in the succeeding generations. Okay, chance events influencing the frequencies of genes in a population result in genetic drift. So this genetic drift or genetic diversity may be lost as a result of genetic drift. Assume that alleles small a and big A are equally adaptive. In sabihin, they can be formed into different types of phenotypes. Allele A might be incorporated into gametes more often than big A, or it could be involved in more fertilizations. In either case, the frequency of small a, increases and the frequency of big A decreases. So that's inversely proportional. So that's happening always because of random events operating at the level of gametes. So try to look at the loss of genetic diversity through genetic drift. In parental generation, um, we have homozygous, okay, big A and small a. And then for the parental gametes, it's kasi equal, okay. Parental, the blue one, let's say coming from the father, and the red one is coming from the mother. And the chance of selection of 8 gametes is 2 heterozygous, okay, and 2 homozygous recessive, okay. So this blue one and red one here. So there is a chances of the chance of selection of 8 gametes in the F2 generation, whereas we have 3 homozygous recessive from the red one, and 1 heterozygous dominant for the blue one. So for the second generation gametes, we have 1/8 of the big A, and we have 2/7/8 of the small a. So that's genetic drift. The frequency of A, of small a increases, and the opposite naman, the frequency of the big A also decreases. It will not be always equal. Okay? What is the founder effect? When a few individuals from a parental population colonize new habitats, so they started to migrate and then search and hunt for a new greener pasture for them. They seldom carry alleles with the same frequency as the alleles in the gene pool from which they came, of course. So let's say they carry red fur color, and then they come into a new colony that emerges from the founding individuals. Okay, it's likely to have a distinct genetic makeup with far less variation than the larger population. So we call this called the founder effect. Founder effect. So take a look at a red fur population that is colonizing new habitats. Okay, so the new colony that emerges from the founding individuals is likely to have a distinctive genetic makeup because they are not from that area. They found the founder effect means to say that the founder they found a new habitat where they can interchange new gametes, where they can form genetic drift. Okay, we call that one founder effect. So one example of this founder effect is a genetic makeup of the Dunkers of eastern Pennsylvania. Okay, they emigrated from Germany to the US early in the 18th century, and for religious reasons have not married outside their sect. So this is a religious domination. Okay, they don't want to marry people from outside their sect. So examination of certain traits like ABO blood group in their population reveals very different gene frequencies from the Dunker populations of Germany. So why is that? These differences are attributed to the chance absence of certain genes in the individuals who founded the original Pennsylvania Dunker population. So they lost. Okay, I mean the gene frequencies are very different from those who left Germany than those who are in Germany. It's because only a few of them, okay, are marrying each other. So it's like the chances of getting a new allele from a pair or a mate is very small compared to when you are in Germany, where a lot of individuals from the Dunker population are there. Okay. Another special case of genetic drift can occur when the number of individuals in the population is drastically reduced. For example, cheetah populations in South and East Africa are endangered. Their depleted populations have reduced genetic diversity to the point that even if population sizes are restored, they will only have the remnant of the original gene pool. So this form of gene pool is genetic drift is called the bottleneck effect. So take a look at this one. We have here a 25 different alleles for a particular gene and population. So it's cited in letters A to Z. Okay? Then bottleneck event, environmental upheaval. Let's say, for example, like the the alleles that are suited for that environment, okay, are just that four alleles. So DJLM. Then environmental upheaval lifts will the population expand. So environmental upheaval is famine, disease, harsh weather conditions, landslides, etc. Any catastrophic event that will affect the reproduction rates of these cheetah. Then after that, if you look at the curve here, so we have only four alleles, and then those four alleles are expanding again because the environmental upheaval has already been terminated from this setup. So they expanded, but we have only four alleles that are present here. So the genetic diversity has been significantly reduced. This is bottleneck effect also from the northern elephant seal, which lives along the western coast of North America from Alaska to Baja California. It gets its name from large proboscis of the male. Try to look at the proboscis of the male on this part of their body. So the northern elephant, Meronga angustirostrix, which is used in producing very loud vocalizations during the breeding of the coast of the Southern California and Baja. So they are using their voices to mate. Males average 1,800 kilograms and females have an average weight of 650 kilograms. This photograph of a large male and a female was taken in San Benito Island, Mexico. Males compete for females during breeding. So the males are every male in the animal kingdom are very aggressive. Very violent when they are choosing for the right female to mate. And a single male may win the right to mate with up to 50 females. That's a lot of females to mate. And the northern elephant is severely overhunted in the late 1800s. Even though its numbers are now increasing, its genetic diversity is very low. Why is that? Why is it happening? What do you think is the reason? Overhunting of the northern elephant seal, kasi it looks like an elephant with snout nila. Proboscis, male. I think the males are being hunted. What do you think? Okay, so even though the numbers are increasing now, the genetic diversity is very low. It's because the population or the reproductive rates of a population has been intervened or has been disturbed because of overhunting. So where does the female get the sperm from the male, where the males are less in numbers? They compete pa, they get died pa during the mating season. So this gene flow with the Hardy-Weinberg theorem assumes that no individuals enter a population from the outside, that no individuals leave from population. So that's the population density of these organisms are intact. No one can come in, no one can come out. Immigration or emigration upsets the Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium, resulting in changes in relative allelic frequency for evolution. Changes in allelic frequency from the migration of individuals are called gene flow. Although some natural populations do not have a gene flow, most populations do. Gene flow for African elephants. Okay, so look at the A and B pictures. African elephants have been considered members of a single species, Loxodonta africana. Okay. Differences in morphology and habitats resulted in the description of two subspecies. So from one species, it brought upon the existence of two subspecies. which is the L. africana africana for the savanna subspecies, and L. africana xylotis for tropical forest subspecies. So the evidence from molecular studies reveals that little gene flow exists between these two groups of elephants and suggests that they should be considered separate species, L. africana and L. xylotis. Little gene flow. I mean, in your basic understanding, the little gene flow, the gene flow is conserved among the populations of the subspecies. Okay, because one is living in the tropical rainforest and the other one is living in the savanna. They could not come out. Okay, they are happy inside their habitats. That's why they are considered as separate species. Mutation are random events, okay? And the likelihood of a mutation is not affected by the mutation's usefulness. Organisms cannot filter harmful genetic changes from advantageous changes before they occur. So, just like when you are being exposed to an X-ray machines, so DNA in your nucleus of your cell might get mutated when your body is being exposed to an X-ray wave. So your cells might mutated in your DNA, okay, which is incorporated to your gametes. And then your gametes will be transferred to your offsprings. And then the harmful thing about mutations are not all mutations are harmful, but there are some that are detrimental like cancer. So you can pass on those traits. Okay. So the mutation is likely to influence the evolution of a group of organisms, and also the traits of organisms. Mutation, yeah, and we call it mutation pressures. Okay, the tendency of our gene frequencies to change through mutation. So the theory of natural selection remains preeminent in modern biology, and natural selection occurs whenever some phenotypes are more successful and leaving offsprings in other phenotypes. Okay? The successful phenotypes are the dominant phenotypes are the ones which are successfully can transfer their traits. And the tendency for the natural selection to occur and upset the Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium is selection pressure. Although natural selection is simple in principle, it is diverse in operation. Yeah. Natural selection, we got the decent with modification is just a phrase. You know? You can understand that phrase alone. But if you take a deep thinking and try to dissect the diversity of its meaning, natural selection is not simple in principle. Modes of selection, okay? For certain traits, many populations have a range of phenotypes, and it's characterized by a bell-shaped curve. We call it a parabola. That shows the phenotypic extremes are less common than the intermediate phenotypes. So the intermediate are found in the middle. Natural selection may affect a range of phenotypes in three ways. So we have three ways. First is directional selection. Okay? Occurs in individuals at one phenotypic extreme or at a disadvantage compared to all other individuals in a population. Okay, so figure 5.58. The deleterious genes decreases in frequency, and all other genes increase in frequency. So directional selection may occur when the mutation gives rise to a new gene, or when the environment changes to select against an existing phenotype. So that's directional selection. One phenotypic extreme are at a disadvantage compared to all other individuals in the population. Disruptive demand is another form of natural selection where the circumstance against individuals of an intermediate phenotype. So it's the other way of saying this. Disruptive or this diversifying selection produces distinct subpopulations. An interesting example of a disruptive selection also illustrates another form of selection is sexual selection, like when the animals are trying to choose and very choosy in their mates. Females are choosy with males. Like for the frogs, the frog call is an indication, or the louder the frog call, the frequencies of the frog call might affect of the male frog, might affect the chances of choosing a possible reproductive mate. Okay, so in obtaining mates, we have sexual selection, and it's a form of disruptive selection. And lastly, we have stabilizing selection. Okay, when both the phenotypic extremes are deleterious, a third form of natural selection is stabilizing selection, which narrows the phenotypic range. So during long periods of environmental constancy, new variations that arise, a new combination of genes that occur, are unlikely to result in morphic phenotypes than the genes have allowed the population to survive for thousands of years, especially when the new variations are at the extremes of the phenotypic range. So the first is directional, we have disruptive, and stabilizing. So these are the different graphs. Okay. Here the y-axis. Okay. Look at this one. Time. Okay. The x-axis of each of the graph is the range of phenotypes for the trait in question. Okay. Letter A. Directional selection occurs when individuals are at one phenotypic extreme are selected against. So this blue one are the extremes. And they are found at the leftmost and the rightmost part of the left because there are few extremes unique. Okay, so it shifts a phenotypic distribution towards the advantageous phenotype. So it shifts toward the middle. Next is disruptive, when an intermediate phenotype is selected against. So the middles. Okay, look at this one. Disruptive, all phenotype, reduce name size niya, lessen here the third one, and then it goes down at the very recent time. So disruptive from middle nawala. Okay. And lastly, the stabilizing selection occurs when the individuals of both extremes, both limbs are gilded. Look at this blue-green bars from the left and the right side. Look at this through time. The extremes really are being selected against one or more. So, which do you think is effective modes of selection? We cannot say. Okay? We cannot say as of now. So, the first example is the directional selection of the peppered moth Bistondicoleria. Graph 2 photos shows the forms of two forms of the moth, which is black and gray. Okay. Letter A, we can see the black and gray. Prior to the Industrial Revolution, bird predators easily spot the black form of moth, and the gray form was camouflaged. Yes, it's really evident in the picture that the black is being selected. Letter B, in industrial regions after the Industrial Revolution, selection was reversed because the pollution killed the lichens. Lichens are surrounding the tree bark. Okay, that cover the bark of trees where moths are rested. So try to look at this one. The gray are being removed from the second picture. Now the gray form is being seen by the predators, whereas the black form is less visible. It happened directional selection, and that's letter A. The phenotypic expression are lost, okay, at the extremes. whether it's on the left or the right. An example of the disruptive selection: the males of the plainfish, plainfin midshipman have two body forms. The type 1 in the center have exaggerated heads and mouths, which are used in defending territories and nests from other type 1 males. Type 2 males in the far left lack exaggerated heads and mouths and resemble females. Far right, the sneaker males are tolerated near the nests of type 1 males, and attempt to fertilize eggs deposited by females in type 1 male nests by darting into the nest during spawning. Disruptive selection has resulted in the maintenance of both of these body forms of plainfin midshipman populations. Sounds pretty interesting. Okay, so the sneaker males are tolerated near the nest of type 1 males and attempt to fertilize eggs deposited by females. This guy here, this one, are pretending to be a female, so that they can come into the eggs of the female and then attack and gather it and eat it. So we will compare now the phyletic gradualism and punctuated equilibrium models of evolution. So, what is phyletic gradualism? So, Charles Darwin perceived evolutionary change as occurring gradually over millions of years. This concept, called phyletic gradualism, has been the traditional interpretation of the tempo or rate of evolution. So, phyletic gradualism. The punctuated equilibrium models, for the long periods of stasis interrupted by brief periods of change, characterize the punctuated equilibrium model of evolution. So we have brief periods of time, and there are some long periods of stasis. Okay, they have changed it. Like in this example. So we have 3 species of bugs. Okay. Rates of evolution, a comparison of phyletic gradualism and punctuated equilibrium in 3 hypothetical beetle species. Okay? So, letter A, in the phyletic gradualism model of evolution, changes are gradual. Okay? It happens in a very slow pace rate. So, ancestral species, through time, through present day species. This letter A is the green one. The letter B, okay, in the punctuated equilibrium model of evolution, rapid periods of change interrupt long periods of stasis. The tree implies that the polar and marking patterns of these beetles change rapidly and did not change significantly during long periods of stabilizing selection or stasis. So, letter A is the phyletic gradualism, letter B is punctuated equilibrium. So for the green one, I explained earlier, species A. So, ancestral from time to present day species. For the phyletic gradualism in letter A, so there's a slow and continuous change in color. Okay? It happened na, let's say the intermediate ancestral species are orange. Let's say it became yellow and it became red. So the marking patterns are changing and the color changing through time. But for the letter B, we call it punctuated equilibrium. Okay. Also, there is a rapid change in color in marking pattern. So there is a sudden change. So the point on this map, on the first node, try to look at the direction going to C. So there is a long period of time. We call it panstasis. Okay? So change is rapid over thousands of years, and transitional fossils are unlikely to experience punctuated equilibrium. So it really sounds interesting for the evolutionary gene pools. You can explain it when you have enough background of the first one, and then vice versa. So how gene pools are important in evolution. So again, these are the conclusion. If you have any questions regarding the lesson, don't hesitate to contact or chat your instructor regarding this matter. So yeah, thank you so much for listening.